I'm going to come up, I'll say my words, and then we're going to go into a section, and I'll say this, it was fascinating because unfortunately October 7th came up, and we took a look at what do we do with this evening, which was celebratory, and that's why we put in the Israel section. And so we're going to head into a section about Israel, which will incorporate Cecilia Margulis is going to say a word, and then she now wrote a song, did a music video that's #1 on the Israel hit parade, which is wonderful. I don't know if they call it hit parade anymore, but for all of you, you know what hit parade is. And so we're going to do that, and then have 2 other videos. One that takes us from Israel back to Brooklyn, and it's something that we produced, BJHI, together with Cecilia, actually, co-produced, and it's with Nissan Black, and it's he and our togetherness with all the communities in Brooklyn. After that will be a continuous video. It'll be one more. That's one of our previous Hall of Fame members, Fivish Finkel, who I'm sure you all remember and know. His closing of when we inducted him, which is amazing, it'll be a lead into the ceremony. And the ceremony will be, and this is, I want to emphasize for all of you who are part of it, each of the inductees will come up and they'll have somebody who's important to them or to us come up with them and be in conversation. Now everybody listen to this who's going to be inducted and who's going to be part of the conversation. In no more than a 4.5 minute conversation, okay? And except for the Stricklers who are coming up together, so they get 7 minutes. So I'm going to call Serena up to start as Serena Rafay, co-chair. I can't believe all the work she does for us. She's unbelievable.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to just welcome all of you. I know some of you came from pretty far to be here tonight. And I know that your being here means that you're interested in Brooklyn Jewish Historical Initiative and the work that we do, and you support the honorees. Each of the honorees has been chosen for their connection to 2 words, Brooklyn and Jewish, and what they've contributed to Jewish communities, Jewish communal life here in Brooklyn and around the world. BJHI started about 10 years ago. We realized that nobody had connected those 2 words, Brooklyn and Jewish, in terms of preserving the history of the contributions that people have made in Brooklyn, that the contributions of the Jewish community of Brooklyn to appreciate the different cultures that are here, the different ethnic groups, the different levels of religious observance, really all over our borough. And to appreciate that, BJHI was formed. And I think we've done a pretty good job of harnessing those 2 words and what being Brooklyn and Jewish is all about.
Hi, it's an extraordinary night for us. I'm Howard Teach and founding chair of the organization, and what I'd like to do is, and I'm going to make some comments in a second, but we're honored tonight to have Alex Brooke-Krasny with us. I'm going to call him up for his moment because he's important to us in so many ways. And part of the evening is devoted to Brooklyn being a home for so many people throughout the world who had to leave places. And we don't often recognize how important this place is. But when you take a look at the people some who are being inducted tonight, the communities they're from, what Brooklyn means. It was the place, as one of the Israelis were saying when they said, are you concerned about going into Gaza? What'll happen to you? He said, it's given us our life. That's why I'm going in. And Brooklyn is that to many people as well. They suffered in other places and they came here. You've been incredible in terms of your community, and so we honor you for that. And if you'd come up and say a word.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I promised I'm going to do it in 45, maybe 50 seconds. Cecilian just remind me of the quote from some Jewish educator. I'm not sure about her name, but I'm going to, in an interest of time, I'm just going to read it. If my enemies care so much about my Judaism that they're trying to kill me for it, I'm going to care more about my Judaism and live for it. That's the quote. Yes. I'm here because of my huge respect to Brooklyn Jewish Historical Initiative, to Howard personally, and here today, I don't know all the whom of famous today. I know 3 people, but I know them almost as long as I live in this country. Marina Kovalev, Steve Cohen, and of course Ezra Friedlander. My congratulations to all the honorees. And we all knew before October 7th that this world is divided into groups, countries as well as people, builders and destroyers. On October 7th became very clear who builders and who destroyers. And by the way, sometimes destroyers blaming builders for not building enough for them. So congratulations to all the people who just build their lives on Judaism, on our laws. They just, in my eyes, in my understanding, they all big builders for Brooklyn, for this world, and for the Jewish community. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm congratulating them today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, and Ezra, I'll turn to you for a second. I remember when we were on the phone just right after the 7th, and I said to you, one of the things that we're going through is BJHI, as how we respond to it, because we're not a policy organization, we're an organization that's about the history. And we've responded in several ways, and it really shows the potential of what we are, and we're so glad so many are here, and we have a website. You can see the www.brooklynjewish.org. We have a Facebook group page, Brooklyn Mishpucha. We have a Facebook page that you can go to. And this gets to the point, and Serena put it up. She put up an Israeli flag on the Facebook page, and we had over 2,000 people come to it almost immediately. Our Brooklyn Mishpucha has about 1,000 people, and they just constantly are talking about experiences they have. So what I said to Ezra is I just wanted his input. And what we found is, and that's why we're doing this segment tonight, that our role is really reaching out. We had a couple of years ago about 400,000 people came to the website. It's not insignificant, with about 10% overseas. And we're expanding and growing. I'll just mention briefly 2 other historical initiatives I started, and I'm saying this for a reason. One in Manhattan. We had an event 2 weeks ago. Hani Ricardo sang the last song, Over the Rainbow. She lost her daughter at the concert. With the Bronx group, we had a Sister City program with a kibbutzim that's right next to Sderot, Mefalsim. Mefalsim, they stood up to and killed every one of the terrorists. And they survived it, but the kibbutzim around them are all destroyed, and they've had to leave. They're not there anymore. The person I spoke to over there, she had to leave a few years ago because it was after the first Gaza incursion, and a lot of them had to leave at that point. So this is serious. They're really on the front line. I just listened to Governor Hochul, who's over there right now, in her comments. And she was standing with Israel over there and told us a quick story that was unbelievable. She was near Sderot at one of the kibbutz Kfar, I think it's Azah, that really got clobbered in this. And she told the story. She was in a home which was totally destroyed. There was blood on the walls still. And there were kites on the floor. What were the kites? Every Sukkot for the last number of years, because they were very much that they should live together with the Palestinians over in Gaza. They prepared kites that at 4 o'clock on Sukkot, they would fly over the fence to show that they were together with them. They never got that chance. And so it was very moving in listening to her, and she was very moved in telling the stories. The kites never got to fly that day, and they wound up in the floor of a destroyed community. So that's what we're talking about tonight as we go into a program, and Cecilia, if you would come over here, because we want to spend some time, and that's why we're not going to interrupt the videos, to take you on the importance of the time we're living through, the importance of a group such as BJHI, not only to recognize those who are part of us in Israel, but what we are as home here, what we're doing and in our relationship to each other, and then what it means to be a Jew, because I never heard anybody say it quite the way that Fiver Schrenkel could possibly say it. So we're not going to interrupt that. And then Serena and I will come back and we'll get into the award ceremony. So Cecilia, if you would come up and just give a lead into your music video. Cecilia is a member of our Hall of Fame from about a couple of years ago. She's the most amazing person, done more music videos and things for the community. Cecilia Margles.
The video we're going to introduce is Ani Mamim, and which means I believe. And many years ago, I met Shlomo Carlebach for the first time, and I asked him, I said, you know, I compose music. I would love you to listen to some of my music. And he said, of course. And he came to my house, and he sat down on my couch, and he said one word to me, play. And for an hour, I was playing songs, that's all. And he said to me, looked at me and said, let's do an album. And what happened was, I wrote several songs, one of which is Ani Mamim. And that was many years ago, and I decided to do a redo of Ani Mamim together with Eli Levin as a duet. And that's what we're introducing today. There was nobody like Shlomo Carlebach. He started the Jewish movement in America. It was not just his music, it was his heart. It was his soul and his spirit. And nobody loved Israel more than Shlomo Carlebach. How many conversations I had with him when he just called me to talk about Israel, to worry about Israel. And he would be doing this today as well. Please watch the video. Thank you.
אני מאמין באמונו של אמו. אני מאמין באמונו של אמו.
ואף על פי שישמח עם כל זה אחכה אלוהי בכל יום שיבוא. אני מאמין באמונו של אמו. אני מאמין באמונו של אמו. יפת שיזממיה עם כל זה אחכה אלוהי
Eloi bechol yom sheyavai. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
ידעתי שיזממיה, עם כל זה אחכה אלוהים בכל יום, בכל יום שיבוא.
ויפלתי שיזממיה, עם כל זה אחכה אלוהים בכל יום, בכל יום שיבוא. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
אני מאמין באמונה שלמה. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
אוי אני מאמין, אוי אני מאמין באמונה שלמה. אוי אני מאמין, אוי אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
יפלתי שיזממיה, עם כל זה אחכה אלוהים בכל יום, בכל יום שיבוא.
יפלתי שיזממיה, עם כל זה אחכה אלוהים בכל יום, בכל יום שיבוא. אוי אני מאמין, אוי אני מאמין
באמונה שלמה.
אוי אני מאמין, אוי אני מאמין באמונה שלמה. אוי אני מאמין, אוי אני מאמין באמונה שלמה.
יפלתי שיזממיה, עם כל זה אחכה אלוהים בכל יום, בכל יום שיבוא.
יפלתי שיזממיה.
Hear our voice, 'cause it's our choice. It's Brooklyn, ooh, it's Brooklyn, ooh. So we celebrate all the Brooklyn. I'm so proud to be a Jew, right here in Brooklyn, my very own Brooklyn. And from everywhere we moved, and we ended up in Brooklyn. We ended up in Brooklyn. So much history, so much time, so many cultures, so many types, well connected, so intertwined. This is the little Brooklyn of mine. Make some noise, and we always spread the joy of Brooklyn. We all of Brooklyn. We speak our views, and we're always in the news in Brooklyn. We're talking about Brooklyn. If you gave the world to me, I still choose Brooklyn. My very own Brooklyn. 'Cause I'm happy as can be, right here in Brooklyn. Our very own Brooklyn. So much history, so much time, so many cultures, so many types, well connected, so intertwined. This is the little Brooklyn of mine. We all know that when a tree grow up in Brooklyn, there's a story to be told. We unfold it while they look at one nation inside another nation. You can call it Jewish. Call Adam Center on a celly, tell him get included. Rerunning Seinfeld, then I flip to Judge Judy, unruly. Joan Rivers glitter like I'm in a movie. Larry David Funny's got my tummy going ooey. Pigmentation got him checking, asking him like who we. Seattle boy in Brooklyn, I'm in kicking it like Bruce Lee. If you gave the world to me, I still choose Brooklyn, my very own Brooklyn. 'Cause I'm happy as can be, right here in Brooklyn, our very own Brooklyn. I'm so proud to be a Jew, right here in Brooklyn, my very own Brooklyn. And from everywhere we moved, and we ended up in Brooklyn. We ended up in Brooklyn.
May I say this, in all sincerity, you talk about Brooklyn. I was born in Brownsville, Brooklyn. My son that is here, Elliot, was born in Brooklyn. My other son was born in Brooklyn. We are complete Brooklynites. And God has been very good to me to let me have 93 years. Yeah. Of course, with this audience, it's no big deal. Half of my life is over. But Brooklyn means a lot to me. I started my career in Brooklyn, in the Yiddish theater. I was 9 years old. There was a theater on Hopkinson Avenue and Pitkin Avenue. I was a child then, and I've been in the Yiddish theater till I was 43 years old. Then I went in, don't applaud, I'll need it later. And then I appeared in the American theater. God has been good to me. I always thank God, believe me. I've been in the American theater, television, movies, and I'm a very proud person that I could say I'm Freivish Finkel and I'm Jewish. Whether you like it or not, I told these producers, you will not change my name, you'll change the picture. I am Jewish, and I remain Jewish, and I love being Jewish. I let the whole world know that I'm Jewish. My grandfather was a shamus. He was a shamus in the shul. People came over to him for favors. I'll never forget, one man came to him on a Wednesday evening for a minyan. He was saying Kaddish. And he says to him, I happened to be there at the time, and my grandfather says, Anaya Michigan. I can't get them Saturday. He's once Wednesday night. Look at him. The man said, look, mister, he said to my grandfather, I'll give you $50, get me a minyan. 1937, dear ladies and gentlemen, $50 was pretty nice money. He couldn't think, where's he going to get the people? But he said to the man, look, I have a minyan. You and I are two. 2 and 2 is 4. Together we'll be 6. We'll look in the mirror, we'll have 12. So the man said, gee, that's wonderful, but I heard you only need 10 for a minyan. He says, good, we'll walk away, let the others daven. And I can't leave today without reciting a poem of how I feel with this great honor here that we have today. Really one of the greatest honors, and it'll be with me in my heart for the rest of my life. So please, let me recite this poem, if I may. It's 3 wishes. And I would say, I wish I had a telescope to scan the starry skies. But since I have no telescope, I'm glad I have 2 eyes. And I wish I had a kitchen run by push-button commands. Oh, well, but since that kitchen is still a dream, I'm glad I have 2 hands. And I wish I had a Rolls Royce to give you, my friends, a ride or treat. Maybe it'll be a few months later, but till that Rolls Royce comes, I'm glad I have 2 feet. I have a telescope with eyes to look to God above, hands to clasp in prayer, and I have feet to take me to my house of worship, to the synagogue, whenever and wherever I want to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I say this real politely and modestly, you're looking at a millionaire. Thank you for everything.
It really is, as Freivish Finkler says, considering the people that we've seen being inducted over the period of years, it's really turned into something very, very special. So we're thrilled to be here this evening with another group of people who deserve, and don't hold back on applause, they're really fine, who are going to give us a very special moment here tonight. We're glad each and every one of you are here, and if you wouldn't mind, Serena, you can start it by calling up the first couple.
So I'd like to call up our first set of honorees. Our first honoree is Stephen Cohn, and with him is Ken Fisher, former council member.
Before we start, Mafisim, where's my Fasim was where my wonderful wife's parents met, and her father fought in the 48 and 56 war of Israel. And God bless your family, and God bless Mafisim, and may all of Israel be successful and be healthy and be strong. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to see so many of you tonight. I'm was proud that Howard asked me to do this, but I'm even prouder to be in a room of people who weren't intimidated by the fact that they're going to an event that had Jewish in the name. So congratulations to all of you for having the fortitude to be here and to participate in this project. Steve, I suspect that there are probably a lot of people in this room that think they know you for a long time. But I'm not sure that people appreciate some of the complexities of your life. So I'm not sure whether when people hear the name Steve Cohn, they associate that with somebody who in the 70s and 80s spent their night in discotheque hanging out with Madonna. Now, did any of you know that was the Steve Cohn of the 70s and 80s? Your life took a remarkable turn when you rediscovered your Jewish roots. Tell us a little bit about that spiritual journey that you took.
Well, I was blessed to meet this wonderful woman, my wife, Hannah Cohn, in Williamsburg at a synagogue, Clymer Street Synagogue, which is no longer there. I saw they finally built a building there right near my father's park named for my dad, Assemblyman Harold Cohn, the Harold W. Cohn Memorial Square Park. And my wife went to the Jewish school in Peru. She's from Lima, Peru. And I said, when we have kids, they'll go to St. Anne's of Packer. And she says, no, they're going to go to yeshiva. And she started me off. I used to go to Peter Luger and eat their wonderful steak. Now I go to Peter Luger for politics, and they wrap fish in aluminum foil, and they serve it to me, and we became kosher. And I had to go out and buy the Little Midrash Says and all of the children's books to really learn my heritage, my Judaism, with my wife's help, to just try to stay ahead of my kids as they went to yeshiva at Flatbush and Ramaz. So I owe it to her. I belong to Congregation B'nai Avraham next door. I saw Eliyahu Raskin is here, which we started about 30 years ago. Rabbi Raskin, his dad, and we've really embraced the Jewish community. The other night we had a vigil with the Brooklyn Heights Synagogue and Kane Street to unite community and really, but I owe that to my wife.
So you're a lawyer, prominent lawyer in Brooklyn, but I think most people in our world know you for having been a leader in the Democratic Party, district leader involved with the state party, advisor to so many different elected officials. But many people have this view, you have a political club, the Seneca Club, right? A clubhouse politician, right? A political boss. You don't seem to have a potbelly or a cigar. Can you talk a bit about what the actual work of being a Democratic district leader in a city like New York, in a place like Brooklyn, what does that actually involve?
Well, the Seneca Club, which was started in 1899, we're supposed to be the machine, was really started, Lincoln's back there, our councilman. Hi, Lincoln, how are you? Was started as a reform organization to stop the amalgamation of the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. And different clubhouses were open throughout the city to stop that, unfortunately. And we fought Tammany Hall. I wasn't there at the time, but we fought Tammany Hall to stop that, and we lost by 1 vote and then became the city of New York. I'm still the vice chair of the New York State Democratic Party. I had the privilege of being a secretary to the Kings County Party. You were the counsel to the Kings County Party. And I just always try to embrace everybody in politics, talk to everybody, listen to everybody. Sometimes it's not that easy, but it's a profession. I actually majored in politics at NYU, and I'm very proud. It took me many years to say I'm proud to be called a politician in every good sense of the word.
So some would say that the district that you represented, your political base, Greenpoint, Williamsburg,
Fort Greene,
the most diverse district in the city. Yes. After all, it has Satma, Pupa, Vina, Vishnitz, Spinka. even a few Bovov and Bells. But it also has, and had, you know, at the time that you were in the district leader position, thousands of first-generation folks from South America, from Latin America, from Poland, from Ireland, from Italy, a real melting pot of New York. What was it about? What was it like to represent so many different people, and how did you find commonalities between them?
You know, I was thinking the other night, Williamsburg had Italian Williamsburg and Polish Greenpoint and I was thinking of a lot of them were undertakers all over that neighborhood in Greenpoint. And I met a guy named Joe Orlando, and he taught me a lot. And when I first ran, I had a three-way primary. Although if I had the time, Abe Gurgis promised me, you're going to have the greatest district in the world. You're going to have half Lower East Side and half in Brooklyn. You'll never have a primary. And 2 weeks later, they did a reapportionment. It was a reapportionment year, and I had a three-way primary. And we reached out to everybody. And I'm proud to say that we doubled the vote of the opponents. And the most amazing thing that year in Williamsburg was the night of Tashlach, when people go down to the water. And as they were coming back, we grabbed them to go vote. And we won because of that wonderful night in Williamsburg. But I went to Boys High School, was almost 99.9% Afro-American at that time, and met a lot of people. Judge Larry Martin, who's still in the Supreme Court, was my classmate. And I think being in that diverse district and graduating from Boys High School really gave me an opportunity to love and feel and enjoy people. We do a breakfast at Juniors. We've been doing it for many years, and it's November 3rd this year, and we embrace everybody. Lincoln will tell you, we bring people together from the left, from the right, from the middle. I just wish the world could do that. We see what's going in Washington right now. If they would only have ignored the left, ignored the right, there are enough votes right in the middle so government can work and they can get things done.
Well, thank you for everything you do to help all of the people in your community, in the Jewish community, in Brooklyn. Steve.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And now we'd like to call up, if we could, Rabbi Eliyahu Raskin and Ezra Freelander. And as they're walking up, I want to say two things, and Eliyahu will pick up the award on the way up. I particularly wanted the two of them together because I think I met Ezra when he was about the same age as Eliyahu. And it reminds me of what it was like to see somebody grow in their lives and become somebody totally extraordinary. And in saying that, I just want to say one quick thing, which is your dad, Ezra had me come out to a Sukkot event, and I was about to leave, and he said, my father's now going to say some words. I want you to stay. And it was a half hour in Yiddish, which I don't speak. And yet, and I said this at the Sukkot that you had, the power of who he is and his expression, you didn't need to understand the words. And so, Ezra, we're delighted to have you because that's something that's carried on in you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard. So first of all, I wanted to thank the BJHI for arranging this beautiful event. And Howard, it's spectacular to look around the room and see such a diverse group of people in the room, and Jews from all different sects, people that look like me and Ezra, and people that look completely different. So I appreciate what you guys do for the community. Thank you. So as a young Hasidic Jew who lives in Brooklyn, I'd like to ask you what propelled you and inspired you to do the work that you do, to be involved with the community, to inspire the community, work with all these non-for-profits, and now I know you have a lobbyist group working in Washington, D.C.
Correct. Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Howard. Thank you, Serena. Very honored that I'm included in this celebration of the Brooklyn Jewish community and the Brooklyn Jewish Hall of Fame. I would also like to acknowledge Council Member Lincoln Ressler, who happens to be a cousin because he's a descendant of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, and so am I. So I like to call him my cousin.
Me too.
So there you go, we're cousins. And actually we're all brothers and sisters, and unfortunately it always takes a tragedy to remind ourselves of that, but we all are interconnected. We just have to realize that more often. Thank you. So to answer your question, I was a young kid who was drawn to history. And when I read about the 1943 March on Washington, which was commemorated several weeks ago, right before Yom Kippur, the 80th year, 1943, 400 Orthodox rabbis tried to plead to then President Roosevelt to save the remnants of European Jewry, and they couldn't get in through the front door. Literally, at that time, you were able to walk up to the White House and knock on the door. Maybe there was a gate, but it wasn't like today where you're blocked 2 blocks away. And they were rebuffed. And Roosevelt knew about this request, and he literally went out through the back door because he didn't want to save Jews. I mean, it's sad, but we know that the United States could have saved Jews. We didn't even fill the quotas. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. This is all fact. If you want to study the history, I don't want to get into it because I want to answer your question. Anne Frank her father had a work visa to work at Macy's. I saw it at the Holocaust Museum, and they didn't even let her father in, who had a job. So when I read that story, I was a kid, I said, oh, I need to get to know elected officials. I need to get to know our representatives in Congress. And I started writing letters, and I have copies of those letters. At that time, you wrote a letter, and you received a letter in response. And no emails, right? And some of the letters were personally, you realized that there was someone at the other end who responded to the letters. I mean, it was a staff person. Some of them were automated, but many of them were personalized. And one thing led to another, and I used to travel to Washington on a regular basis. Even at that time, I would leave yeshiva. I would go, does anyone remember there was an airline called People's Express? Steve remembers that? I went on a youth fair. For $24, you were able to fly to Washington. And then there was the Trump shuttle, where they told you if you arrived 20 minutes before the flight, you're guaranteed to get onto the plane. So what I did was I would go to yeshiva, I would take my hat, put it on the Gemara, and then I would go to the airport and fly to Washington and run around. And you could walk up the steps of the Capitol. It was way before 9/11, and I just observed, and I went to the hearings, went to the gallery, and one thing led to another. I started offering my services to organizations and asking them to hire me, and after 9/11, I formalized my firm, so yeah, in 2001.
Wow, that's amazing.
I worked on political campaigns. Steve, how many times did we interact with each other in that capacity? Howard, many others.
Were you able to get back before the Talmud class was over? Great.
But that's the story. So that's how I got into it. But that initial foray, the initial interest was, I always felt that you needed a personal relationship, because if you study history, Truman had a friend, Jacobs, who he did business with. He had a hardware, not a hardware store. I can't pronounce the word. And I realized at that time that it's always, and to this very day, even with modern technology, it's always the personal relationship that gets things done. So that was the impetus. That's what I understood and I internalized from way back when.
Amazing, thank you. One last question before we close up, to try to pull out some of the secrets that you keep hidden within you, because I've heard there's lots of them. But one particular thing, I was doing some research and I saw that you've pushed through a lot of gold medals for special people who supported the Jewish people throughout history. One particular person, Raoul Wallenberg.
Yes.
What were the challenges, the excitement? I know it took more than a year, right?
Correct.
Many years to push it through, and I also did some research and saw that you need at least 2/3 of the Senate to vote that in.
Yes, 2/3 of the House and Senate. So a congressional gold medal requires legislation to be passed, and it requires an act of Congress. You need 2/3 of both the House and the Senate. So there's 435 House members. You need 290 co-sponsors in the House, 67 in the Senate. Now, why is this so difficult? Because you have to approach each and every House and Senate office. Now, Raoul Wallenberg was the famous Swedish diplomat who saved 100,000 Jewish lives. Literally the last year, he was sent to Budapest by the War Refugee Board, which was a division of the State Department. The only reason why they did that was because there was increased pressure towards the end of the war. Making a very long story short, my grandfather was saved by Raoul Wallenberg. He had a Schutzpass in Budapest, and I decided to do that because it was the centennial of his birth in 2012. I always, when I embark on such a project, I always find a milestone date. So we introduced the legislation in 2012. He was born in 1912. To mark the centennial of his birth, we passed the legislation in 2014, which was the 70th anniversary of when he arrived in Budapest in 1944. It was to remind the world. When I first started this project, people said, "Hey, everyone heard of Raoul Wallenberg." I said, "Yeah, but not the people that are younger than me." And the truth is, we created an infrastructure of information about him, and it was very well received. And yeah, that's what I did. And I'm working on a congressional gold medal right now to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, to honor 60 diplomats under the chairmanship of Abe Foxman, 60 diplomats who saved Jews during World War II. Now, obviously, Wallenberg is on that list, but there's 59 others who are not as famous, so they were never recognized. People don't understand that these diplomats were social outcasts. When they returned back to their home country, people said, you disobeyed your government, you're going to lose your pension. You lost your pension. No one wanted to have anything to do with them. The vast majority of them died penniless and forgotten, and that's why we named this project Forgotten Heroes of the Holocaust.
Wow, thank you so much, Ezra. We appreciate you.
The Honorable Abe Gurgis, if you would come up with Councilmember Lincoln Ressler.
Thank you so much, Howard and Serena, and special thank you to Rita as well for your extraordinary work. I started at the Brooklyn Heights Synagogue when it was 2 doors down this way. By the time I had my bar mitzvah, it was 2 doors down this way, so it feels fitting to be right here in the middle and to be celebrating somebody who contributed his entire life to public service. Abe Gurgis is famous as a former council member, as the administrative judge for the Supreme Court, but to me, he was famous as a kid growing up because his granddaughter Sarah was a year behind me, Sarah Kurtz, who was an old friend. So I've known the legend and lore of Mr. Gurgis since before I had the chance to meet you. I'd love to start by just asking, you have this reputation as a total mensch, and through a long career in public service, you've always kept a smile on your face. How have you pulled it off?
It's simple. It's being yourself. That's the key. I'm blessed. My wife Laurel is here. My daughter Nina was here a few minutes ago. My son-in-law is here. My granddaughter was here. My grandson was here. My great-granddaughter was here. My great-grandson was here. 4 generations. 4 generations. 4 generations of love. And when I look back over the years, and it's hard for me to recall everything, you know. But I think it's interesting because I had so many different jobs in the city council, for example, as a judge. But the most important job that I had, which I loved more than anything else, when I was chairman of the homeless committee in the city council. To me, that was the most rewarding of them all, because I was really able to help people that needed help. And I was asked, I wrote something down what I'd like to share with you, because I was asked by a reporter when I retired, they wanted to know if I had some advice to give a young person who was going into public service, what I would say to them. And you know, I thought Mother Teresa said it better than I could, and said exactly what I felt. She said, if you are kind, people may accuse you of being selfish and ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone can destroy overnight. Build it anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do the good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It is never between you and them anyway. And that is really a philosophy I've tried to live with all of my life. And I've been blessed, more than blessed. I've had a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous life. And it was because of, you know, friends that I have right here, like Steve Cohn. Steve and I go back so long, and Larry, and you're here as well, and Shelley. It's good seeing you here, and Rita, we go back a long, long, long time, and it's hard to remember. And you know, I'm just finishing writing a book, by the way, which, wow. And I think that really opened up my eyes as to who and where I was, and it was starting about going around corners, because every time I went around a corner, I found myself in a new profession. So I'm waiting now to see what next corner I'm going to go around.
Well, I am excited for all the next corners you're going to go around. I want to ask you about all of the different challenges and experiences that you navigated through your long career. So pick a fun topic, from navigating the fiscal crisis when you were serving in the city council to ruling on Atlantic Yards. I think you must have been chairing that homeless committee during the time that the right to shelter came into effect in New York City. Any topic that feels relevant or particularly meaningful to you to speak to, or relevant for the group today?
Well, you know what it was the district that I represented as a councilman. It was Greenpoint, Hasidic Williamsburg, Spanish Williamsburg, Fort Greene, Brooklyn Heights, Park Slope. And what was interesting about the district is that it was so diverse. But what was so interesting about the district is everybody wanted the same thing. So it wasn't hard for me. It was sometimes difficult in making political decisions. For example, when I decided to co-author the gay rights bill, Hasidic Williamsburg, who was very orthodox, and Greenpoint, that was very conservative, they wanted to disown me, but they kept me. Okay,
even when Ed Koch endorsed against you.
And Ed Koch, well, I had the distinct pleasure of being on Ed Koch's hit list. I was the only one that was on his hit list because even though I had supported him when he ran for office, I liked a lot of the work that he did. I disagreed with him on some bills.
What chutzpah?
And excuse me.
What chutzpah?
No, it wasn't a chutzpah. He had an absolute right to do it, and I had an absolute right to oppose him. And it was a pleasure because I was never on Nixon's hit list, so I was on Koch's hit list. So, it was really interesting times. But the funniest part about that is I knocked his candidate off the ballot, and I didn't even have a primary. So it was interesting times.
Did Stevie and Ken help on that one, or no?
But it's you know what it is. If you're yourself and you're honest, even if people disagree with you, if you tell them the way it is and you do what's right, and that was always my simple philosophy. When I had a bill in front of me, what's the right thing to do? So many times I voted against some bills. I voted for some bills. I'm very proud on the homeless bill. The vote was 49-1 on the budget. I was the only one who got up and spoke and said that we needed more money to help the poor. And even though a lot of the liberal council members that were there at the time agreed with me, they didn't vote with me. But I decided to vote the way my conscience told me to vote. But more and more importantly, as I see there are 30 seconds left, more importantly, I'm privileged to be here today. I'm privileged to be a Jew. And that's very important to understand, and I'm confused. I don't understand what's happening in this world. It just doesn't make any sense. You got a guy like Trump, for example, who was one of the wealthiest people in the world, becomes president of the United States. Look at the legacy he could leave for his children. What are they going to say about him and his children? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. The greatest gift that you can be. My mother taught me, she gave me 4 prongs to live by. The first is the most important thing is your health. If you have your health, you're a millionaire. The second is mitach nicht haras in the Welt. You don't have to own the world. You make enough money, be satisfied. The third is take care of people that are less fortunate than you are. And the last thing is the only thing you leave is your name. Thank you so much for being here.
So our next honoree has a little bit of fame. I was delighted when he agreed to be honored by the Hall of Fame. His name is Dan Hedaya. Dan is, my most favorite role was when he played Bette Midler's husband in The First Wives Club. So with that, Dan, come on up. And to interview Dan is Noah Rinsky. Now, Noah is the creator of Old Jewish Men. And if those of you who have TikTok or Instagram or if you Google Old Jewish Men, you'll see lots of really, really cute videos. And I was really honored because Dan is from my community. I'm Syrian, I'm Jewish, I grew up in Bensonhurst, and so did Dan. A little bit before me, because he's a little older than I am, but he had a very different upbringing than I did because he went into acting. So I am just delighted that he decided to join us tonight, and let's give him a round of applause.
Hey, Dan.
Hello.
Thanks for showing up.
Shalom.
With my experience working with exclusively old Jewish men, when Serena so kindly asked me to do this, I thought I got the easiest job in the world. You just ask one question, and old Jewish man just talks the rest of the time, and then good night. All right. But I have grown up, watching Dan's films. I'm a big fan of movies like The Usual Suspects. I finally watched Blood Simple last night. For some reason, I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan. The movie evaded me all this time, and last night I was blown away by his performance. Terrific film, and I thought that he's a terrifying character in Blood Simple, and I thought that the pinky ring he's wearing in the movie is the same one he's wearing now, but I was definitely mistaken. However, and you're not as terrifying in person as you were in that movie. He was also in movies like Clueless, First Wives Club, Ransom. What's that? Night at the Roxbury. How could we forget? John Fortenberry directed that?
Who?
John Fortenberry is the director?
I really don't remember.
Okay. He's worked with Oliver Stone. He's worked with the Coen Brothers. Anyways, Dan, I think if I had to ask, we all want to know the stories working with all these, working in Hollywood for so long. Is there anything that comes to mind?
There are many. I was hired to do a film called Hunger, and it was to be filmed in London. And the star of the movie was Catherine Deneuve. So I was a little bit, excited, anxious. My dear friend Al Sutton, who is in heaven now, he passed away a year ago, requested that I get one of her hairs. So anyway, the day we were to meet, they brought me over to the place where we were going to film the scene, which was in front of a townhouse similar to the townhouses in New York. London was being used as New York. And they brought me there, and they said, Catherine will be coming over shortly. So I was nervous. I was a little bit nervous. Yeah, Catherine Deneuve, I was nervous. So finally, she's being brought over by the assistant director, and she is in curls. She just come from makeup. So I said hello. She said hello. And I said, wow, you look like my sister-in-law. She said, really? I said, yeah, no, she's beautiful. Really? I had to dig myself out of that hole. Finally, she was very friendly and lovely, and we got along very well. It's interesting to meet people who are so famous, and you have an image of them, and then you're working with them, and just people. This notion of celebrity is, I've always thought, a little bit pathological. People are pushed higher than they should be, and people are pushed lower than they should be. For example, on a set, extras, they're the background people, and they're all very overly humble, to the so-called stars. And I remember telling one of them, I have more lines today than you, but we're equal. We're people. I have my job, you have your job. But the thing that's propagated, the Walk of Fame and all of that. I once told someone, I said, if I were ever offered the Walk of Fame, which I will not be, I would refuse it. The reason being, I wouldn't want my father's name. They put it on the street on Hollywood Boulevard where people, spit and walk, and it's a dishonor. So fame can be very seductive, but finally it's I do what I do because I truly love it. My brother-in-law, when I was first beginning, they were concerned. What are you doing becoming an actor? You have a wholesale business to get into. Your father's retail baby wear store, kiddie shop. So he said, let's have lunch. In fact, his son is here, Harold Shamma, my nephew. And at lunch, Izzy said to me, Danny, I'm starting a new business. It's going to be phenomenal. Phenomenal. We're going to make tons of money. I want you to be my partner. I was eating a tuna fish sandwich. So I took one last bite, and about 10 seconds passed. I said, I can't. Thank you. And we continued to eat. He never brought it up again. And then years after, when I had good fortune, he was proud, But I knew, something in us knows something. And I always felt that God was the casting director, not the casting directors, but God. Always, I felt he's going to put me in this and he's not going to put me in that. Anyway, that's a little bit of a anecdote.
Thank you. Very inspired. I was wondering, few actors work as consistently for so long. If there's one thing you could attribute that longevity to.
To what?
There's one thing you could attribute the longevity of your career and the consistency. All right. Thank you so much, Dan.
Individuals who've been extraordinary in their lives, but we know them as Shelley and Larry. If they would come up, and Mara Rubin, you're going to be the conversant with them. We're delighted to have you here.
So, you guys are born and bred, and you still live in Brooklyn, but you went to different high schools. Larry?
Yes, I went to Abraham Lincoln High School. I was waiting for the yays. I really was. I loved high school. I was in all the school plays and won the drama medal. I had great friends this day. The talent was remarkable. I think of it. I went to school with the likes of, are you ready? Neil Diamond, Neil Sedaka, and sportscaster Marv Albert.
I have to interrupt here to just tell you a little story about Neil Diamond. During COVID, the Lincoln High School decided to do a 61st reunion on Zoom. And Neil showed up on Zoom. And he has Parkinson's, but he was very, very good, verbal, sharp. And all of a sudden he says, Larry, remember Neil is the big star. And he says, Larry, you were the star in high school, he said. And you know what I remember? There was a play. And in the play you played the devil. And the horns fell off. And you know what you said? You ad-libbed and said, well, what do you expect? They were made in Japan. He remembered that. Amazing.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that well.
And me, I went to Lafayette High School. A rival school, but it was a school rich with Jewish, yes, largely a Jewish population, but also Italian. It's where you really learned to mix and made friends. We didn't even know that we were, well, not poor, but kind of middle, lower middle class, because there was such a feeling of camaraderie. Larry still has very close friends to this day from Lincoln, and me from Lafayette. And I was in the Speakers Bureau. That was the acting group at Lafayette High School. And it was the teachers, the camaraderie, and all of that. And when I graduated, I won the drama medal, which will come into the story a little later of how I got into what I got into eventually.
Well, you guys went to different high schools, but how did you two meet?
How did we meet? Not that I remember it exactly, but it was September 22nd, 1959, 12:01 noon, speech 15, introduction to acting. And
you came into...
Wait a minute, because what happened was there were a lot of empty seats, and this cute boy walks in, and he looks all around, and he sits down right next to me.
No, you sat next to me.
Who do you believe? Yeah.
So in Brooklyn College, what did you think your career paths would be, and did you follow those paths?
Well, not exactly, and I will tell you why. What happened is that we got married right after college, and 9 months and 6 days, 6 days later, we had
2
twins. And as a matter of fact, one of them, right here, Karen, show your face. That's one of my twins. The other one lives in Boston, and I didn't want her to make the trip. And the other one came 4 years later. There she is, our beautiful Sari. And Karen's beautiful, too. And anyway, we needed money. So what happened is I thought I was going to go into theater. I was also in all the plays. Larry and I were in a group called the Varsity Players. But we had to do something else. We had to make money, and so we taught.
Yes, right? we left. Well, what happened was we had rented a place that was lovely for 2 people. Well, not for 4 people. And we quickly had to, shall we say, rent in an apartment house.
Exactly. So I eventually became a news radio anchor reporter. And I was actually...
Oh, well, and you were a pioneer. You were one of the first women radio reporters, anchors in New York City. So how did you get there, since this field was almost non-existent for women when you were in college?
It was non-existent when I was in college. There were really no radio news women broadcasters at the time. So it was not something that I really thought about. So I went into teaching because you know what our parents told us. Do you remember, some of you? You know what? Whatever you want to do, take education courses because you'll always have it to fall back on. And it's a good thing we did because of what happened. But anyway, I didn't love teaching as much as Larry did. He'll tell you about his in a moment. And I wanted something else. And in the late 60s, I began to hear women doing the news on broadcasting. Just a few who are still dear friends to this day. Irene Cornell from WCBS, Jane Tillman Irving, and a few others. And I said, oh, I could do that. That's what I want to do. Because it would sort of be like acting. I would be telling stories. And also, I was a news junkie. We used to say that, or I used to say that Larry became the 13th section of the New York Times on our wedding night, because I had to read the papers first. It was a Saturday night, and the Times came out late. Yeah.
So Larry, same question. When you went to Brooklyn College, did you end up doing what you wanted to do?
I thought I would become a musical comedy star. Theater was part of my childhood. I appeared, are you ready for this? On the Milton Berle show. In fact, I was on 4 times with Milton Berle when he, he starred in the show. I appeared with as I said, with Milton Berle. So I taught over the years, though, because as I got out of that school.
What schools did you teach at, Larry?
Well, because there were, I started at Sethlo Junior High School. Then I went on to Sheepshead Bay High School. And then I went to Edward R. Murrow
Where you met
High
Laurel.
School, where I met Laurel.
Hey, Curtis
I
as
did
well.
all of those things, but it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. I actually began in the Catskills, however, before I met Shelley. In 1957, when I was recruited by a friend to sing and MC at a hotel, you would probably heard of this big hotel that I worked at. The Shlomi Ehrenreich Hotel. That was the name of the hotel. Anyway, I did the Loch Sheldrick Inn, the Grand Mountain Hotel, and then finally I did for 22 years the Brickman Hotel, and then Kutcher's Country Club.
And by the way,
for 18 years.
If you haven't seen it on Amazon, there is a documentary called Welcome to Kutcher's, the last Catskills resort, and Larry has a major role in that. Don't miss it. Okay.
That's true. I had the major, well, anyway. Think of some of the stars who came out in the Catskill Mountains. That's where I worked, in the Catskills. Besides teaching in New York City, in Brooklyn, I was up in the mountains. And I would see Sid Caesar and Milton Berle and Joan Rivers and Mel. I mean, it was unbelievable. Mel Brooks. It was wonderful. And I also spent a good amount of time not only in the Catskills, but hearing cantors sing. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Maybe because I was a professional.
And you know what I kind of wanted to talk about, because we're talking about our Jewish experience in growing up in Brooklyn. You know, I didn't grow up religious in Brooklyn, but I was steeped in Yiddishkeit anyway. One of my grandparents, actually both my sets of grandparents, I was lucky I had them for a long time, lived in Coney Island. And my maternal grandmother fancied herself as a Jewish actress, a diva. But the thing is, she really wasn't on the Jewish stage per se. She sang and she performed at the Pavilion on West 29th Street on the boardwalk. And so I got such a great feeling of the Jewish, the Yiddishkeit, the feel of Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn, both of us, was such a big part of our lives, even though we didn't know each other growing up. But to this day, wherever we go, and we're in Florida for 5 months, we're leaving Sunday for the winter, it's still always great to say we are from Brooklyn. Right.
Hey! And what about Ebbsfield?
Yeah, oh, when you think of Brooklyn, Larry just brought up the best part of Brooklyn for me growing up. I was, you ready for this? As a young teenager, I was the secretary of the Brooklyn Dodger fan club. My friends and I used to take the train. We used to go to Ebbsfield. We used to bake cakes for the likes of Gil Hodges, Jackie Robinson, Duke Snyder. Oh my God, those were such heady days. And when they left Brooklyn, it was when I knew that things and people could die, because I could not, it was like a death in the family.
These two people can get more Brooklyn Jewish than that.
I went with my father to Brooklyn, to the Brooklynites, and it was wonderful.
And I just want to say one other thing. I don't know if our time is up or not, because we get extra time because we're two people.
Oh, we're two
but
people.
I just want to say that my children, of course, grew up in Brooklyn, and now they're scattered. One, Karen, over there, she lives in Westchester. Sari lives in New Jersey, and the other daughter lives in Boston. But this is, to me, so great. 3 of my young adult grandchildren, you know where they live now? In Brooklyn. Yes. Thank you very much.
Should I thank them?
And I want to thank someone else. I want to thank Howard Teach, first of all, for inviting us here. I want to thank you for this honor, and I want to thank you for that lovely tribute to Israel. I know all of us, every one of us, has a story to tell about how sorrowful and sad and how meaningful this to all of us. Let's really pray for peace.
And before they walk off, I just want to say one of the wonderful parts of this evening is you get 4.5, 7 minutes here because there are 2. But what we want to do and what we're going to be continuing to do is, whether it be through Zoom or in person, to have longer times with each of the people who are being inducted, because each of them has a story that could go on for hours. And part of what we feel we need to do as Brooklyn Jewish Historical Initiative is have oral histories and have the recollections for future generations of people such as this and all the others who have been brought in. So Shelley and Larry, thank you for being who you are.
Thank you.
Marina Kovalyev will, if you'd come up with Judge Rachel Fryer. What Marina has done for the Russian community in bringing recognition to its cultural heritage is second to none. And we admire you so much for that. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Howard. Thank you, everyone. I was not born in Brooklyn. More than that, I was not born in America. You don't know the school I went to. And maybe even though you read New York Times, you don't know the country I used to live in. But I think I know every one of you, because as a part of movement Let My People Go, I'm here. So before you will be asking me questions, I apologize. I just want to thank everyone for that opportunity to be here. And I was sitting in the audience, and I had the feeling that it is my family. You brought me here, but the rest, I think me as well as my friends who are here in the audience, we did it on our own. And I want your applause to my friends and family who are great physicians, attorneys. They own best stores in Brooklyn. They call Brooklyn their home, even though not all of them continue living in Brooklyn. But Brooklyn is a territory that we love and we call home. So thank you.
Yes. So, does this work? Okay. So, Marina, when Howard called me and asked me to do what I'm doing now and speak about you, I said, I don't even know her. What am I going to say? So, he sent me some information, and I was really like overly wowed and impressed by all the accolades and the awards and the Women of the Year awards that you got. But I have now a certain connection with you. I was in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, on that day when I woke up to the sirens. And my family's trip to Israel ended in a way which I could have never imagined. And it took us a long time to get flights to get out. And at first I was told there's no flights out of Tel Aviv by my good travel agents. And then I went online and I was able to find a ticket through Africa. But my kids said, no, Ma, we're not letting you do that. And then we found a journey. And we got to the airport, and I wanted to get there early, and it's a good thing I didn't, because I just missed the sirens when there was a missile that was aimed at the airport. But I missed that. So I missed all the passengers running into the secure room. And at the airport, I felt like a refugee. And then when we had to take the connecting flight to Athens, Greece, and then the next flight to London, Gatwick, and then the shuttle to Heathrow, then the flight to JFK, I can only think now what someone like yourself had to go through, had to endure, and I tip my hat to you for how you accomplished so much in spite of all that, because now I had a small taste of what it felt like. I understood what it felt like during the Holocaust when I had to decide, am I going to leave my children here, because I have some children that live there, and come back home? When should I go? How should I go? It was such a turmoil that I went through. How did you do it? How did you get through all of that? How did you achieve what you've done and remain so proud and so Jewish? And together I want to say with you, Am Yisrael Chai, because what you've done is a tribute to that. So share with me, give me a secret.
The secret is to have that desire to be Jewish. We spend our lives living behind the Iron Curtain. When I was a little girl, my grandmother said to me, "This is the name of your father that you never knew, but he is Ukrainian. So this is your name." My grandparents brought me up, but they never wanted me to carry their name because they were Jewish. They taught me Jewish traditions, Jewish songs. What does it mean to be part of the Jewish family? But they never wanted me to say loud, "I am a Jew." My sister, who is sitting in audience, when I asked her once, "Why wouldn't you go and study what you are dreaming of?" She, who had a Jewish name, replied, she said, "I can't do in this country what you is allowed to do because I am Jewish." So I wanted to be Jewish, and for that I was ready for everything and anything.
Wow.
And you just mentioned some awards, and I want to share with everyone the most important award I gained in my life. 5-6 years ago, my children came to my office and they said, "We would like to share something very important with you. Your grandson wrote an essay, as every year at the end of the year, and he went to Horace Mann, children were supposed to write a special essay. Your grandson wrote an essay, and the theme of the essay was your hero, your role model. And it was the first in the history of Horace Mann. The child wrote not about a famous actor or sport figure or politicians or mother or father. He wrote about his grandmother. So that was my most important award in my life. And so even though I'm so thrilled and honored to be here, I have to tell you this is the second most important award I get. So thank you very much. I hope I'm fine. I did.
You did amazing, and I want to thank Howard and everybody else who put this program together, because I feel so honored to be part of this. And now we are sisters.
Yes.
Okay? We're family, we're mishpacha now. And I met you.
And we have time to learn about each
Right.
other.
And I've learned also that good things come in small packages. So that
Yes.
puts both of us in that category.
Thank you. Just before I conclude, I want to thank Howard and Serena and the entire board for making that beautiful Israeli beginning, because for us, Russian Jews, Israel is the most important part in our life. Somehow we didn't get there physically, but we are part of the Israel, so I'm Israel High.
So we're now down to one of the most important awards, and we would ask you to come up as well. But I want to say something before. Serena Rafay, who's co-chair of BJHI, and we're talking about immigrant roots, is one of the leading historians given recognition to the Sephardic Jewish community, particularly the Syrian Jewish community. And what I'd ask her to do before she sits down to do the conversation is if you would just give us a couple of minutes in terms of the importance of Brooklyn to the Sephardic Jewish community and the Syrian Jewish community. Not to take away from the conversation, this isn't part of the time. And so I introduced Serena Rafay, who will be in conversation with Clement Sofer, who we're going to be thrilled to hear what you did, because I know from Serena. So thank you.
So just a little overview about my community. All four of my grandparents were from Syria, and they came in the early 20th century. Lived in Bensonhurst, which is where I grew up. And the Syrian Jewish community had a very different experience than Ashkenazic Jews on the Lower East Side, because they had a very different culture and a very different outlooks, different values. And that value system really diverged a lot. When you were an Ashkenazic Jew, it was, your kids are going to go to college, and my son the doctor, my son the lawyer. In our community, it was you're going into business, and women like myself during that time period were going to go to college to find a husband. And so higher education wasn't as valued until the yeshivas started to really get moving in the community, which was by the 1960s. If you were going into kindergarten, you were going into a yeshiva, and you had a yeshiva education, and that was a little bit after when I was going to school. And so at that point, the community started to get more religious, and they started to go more into wholesale because they couldn't work on Shabbat. And the times had been hard before that, during the Depression and coming out of World War II. So the community grew, and we're kind of have a reputation of being insular, of being uber wealthy, but the truth is we're just like every other community. We have our poor, we have our middle class, we have our wealthy, we have our uber wealthy, we have our Bikur Halims, we have we have kids in yeshiva who are getting tuition assistance. So really, just like any other religious or Orthodox community, we have that same kind of bell curve. And that's the community I grew up in. And as over the years, the community absorbed Jews from Arab countries that were leaving other places. So someone like Clem, who came out of Egypt, the Moroccan Jews, the different communities, the Lebanese community, when they had to come out of Lebanon, they all got absorbed into what we know today as the Syrian Jewish community. But really, it's a melting pot of Jews from Arab countries, because after 1948, I would tell you that about 900,000 Jews had to leave Arab countries. And this is not something that we talk about a lot. You hear a lot about the Arabs that were displaced, but you don't hear about the Jews that were displaced and who left their families behind, who left their money behind, who left their property behind, who lost everything by leaving those Arab countries. And so what Clem's story is Clem comes from Egypt, and he has that similar story. So with that, I'm going to start by sitting down with Clem and talking a little bit about where he comes from and his contributions to the Jewish communities, not just in Brooklyn, but around the world. So Clem, we are really proud to induct you into the class of 2023, the Brooklyn Jewish Hall of Fame. Clem is known for his work saving Jewish cemeteries in Ukraine, Portugal, India, Egypt, Germany, and Belarus. His contributions include building many, many synagogues, both in New York and in Florida, as well as playing a critical role in 1992 with the rescue of over 4,500 Syrian Jews who came out of that country, who had been prisoners there from 1948. So with that, Clem, when he was a child, he was jailed in Egypt as a teen, to his business success and retirement now in Florida. Clem has volunteered in ways that have a long and lasting impact on Kal Israel and the Jewish people. He was honored by the Chabad to light the entire Agam menorah for Hanukkah in Central Park in 1987. And in 1993, he was the recipient of the Congressional Award and has gotten many congratulatory letters from governors of New York, senators, congressmen for his dedication to Jewish causes around the globe. He received the Golden Key to the city of Miami Beach by Mayor Clement. So Clem, I'm really honored to bring you into the Hall of Fame. I know you've been involved in many things during the course of your life, but I'd like to start with your work on Jewish cemeteries. In our talks, you mentioned that you worked with Ava Katisha and that you were able to leverage government influence to get some of these governments to save the cemeteries. Can you tell us about that?
First of all, B'Shem Hashem Nahaseh V'Nasliyah. In the name of all names, God will help us and will always be with us. I was very, very fortunate with the help of Hashem to connect me with the right people. It came from heaven because permanently, actually, I am a shmata salesman. I own the Shmata company in New York with a lot of retail stores. And really, I had no idea about politics and how to reach the right people. But my guidance went straight. I had a problem in Egypt, and my grandparents were there, and I didn't want Egypt to take away my cemetery of my grandparents, personally. So I started to work, and I lobbied personally the Senate and House appropriation, and I blocked the $2.3 billion that Egypt gets every year in order for me to get what I wanted, which is the Jewish cemetery in Mitzrayim. So I was very, very fortunate that I tapped the right piano keys and I found a beautiful song, and the song came back at me. I had unanimous vote in the Senate and the House. If Egypt does not return the Jewish cemetery under something called human rights issue, they will forfeit the money. They didn't want to forfeit the money. I got back my cemetery and I was able to do whatever I wanted. I built a bridge over it, suspension bridge over it. Learning that key to play in the piano, I used the same key to beat Ukraine. President Kuzma, I brought him down to his knees. I dealt the same thing with Belarus. I did the same thing in Portugal. President Suarez, I brought him down to his knees to give me what I want by working my friends in the Senate and House appropriation. India, I just had a personal connection to the Prime Minister of India, and through that I was able to get also the Indian portion, which was in the town Cochin. in Cochin, India, they were taking the Jewish cemetery, selling it for property to a Maharaja. I was able to return back that cemetery back to the Cochin community of Haifa. And that's how I did it, through using the same idea. And by the way, for Marina, I was on the streets also parading in the United Nations, asking for let my people go in 1970s. And also my committee traded 5,000 big lighters to save a Russian life, if not 10,000 big spends in order for us to get some Russian Jews out of Russia.
I know you were a teenager in Egypt, and Nasser wanted all of the Jews to leave. In fact, they stamped the passports of people leaving to say, leaving never to return. You worked with Rabbi Abraham Shweka, may he rest in peace, and a team to prepare documents for all the Jews leaving Egypt. What was it like for you to leave Egypt at 16 without your family? What did you do? Where did you go? And also tell us about that experience of being in jail.
Well, 1956 was a year of me growing up from being a 15-year-old kid to a 40-year-old man within a couple of weeks. The Jewish community was terribly accused as being spies for Israel. Nasser wanted to cover up his major defeat in 1956. The Sinai was conquered from him. The Jewish armies were in Suez Canal, another 50 miles, and they take Nasser out. So he was so embarrassed that he accused the entire Jewish population of Egypt to be spies. That created such a hatred. Bombs exploded in the ghettos. They killed 200 of our Jews. Women were raped. What you see on TV, I had that scenario played in my country where women were raped and children was killed and husbands were slated just in the street. We had all that exact scenario back in Egypt. In fact, I reminded it to Sharon. I told him, don't do it because you give that land to these people, you're going to get A, B, C, D, and I described to him the whole thing. I predicted it for him. He would not listen. This is what happened to us from these guys, the animals on the other coast. Okay, now I was arrested because I was able to make certificate and let a lot of Jewish people leave the country. Actually, I was working against the best interests of Egypt. They arrested me. I went for an 8-hour interrogation. I wouldn't wish it on the worst dogs of anybody at 15 and a half. They wanted me to sign a paper that I'm a spy for Israel. I wouldn't sign it. If I signed that paper, I would be hanging in a public square the following morning, and my entire family will disappear. So my question was, what do I do? I said, I'm a dead man, but I don't have to sacrifice my family. I will not sign that paper. So they played Russian roulette with my brain when I was 15 and a half, and they didn't succeed. 8 hours of it, they wouldn't get me to sign because I considered myself a dead person. If I'm dead, my family will not suffer. And that was the key, and I resisted it. I was very fortunate. The Red Cross came into my favor, saved me, took me out of interrogation. They kicked me out on a 24-hour notice from Egypt, $5 in my pocket, and gave me a passport, dangerous stamp for the public security. If I'm dangerous, I am persona non grata. My home is the ocean. I landed in Greece, was my first time place. I didn't speak the language. My parents was forced to stay in Egypt for another 2.5 years. I didn't speak the language. For the first time in my life, I was on a plane. I didn't know even what a plane looks like. Remember, I was only 15 and a half, never traveled from my country. When I got there, you know what I found? My Jewish brothers. They knew what I did in Egypt, and they saved my life. I got a visa, temporary visa from the Israeli embassy, protecting me in front of anybody. I traveled every place 2 weeks from one country to another. And finally, Senator Jacob Javits was my mentor. He brought me to this country on a student visa. And I thank the ground I walk on into these United States. It's the best country on the planet. And Brooklyn is the best part of it.
The situation of the Jews in Syria from 1948 on, when the State of Israel was created, they were not able to leave. They were persecuted. Many people were escaping because, and that caused the creation in the late 1980s of the Council for the Rescue of Syrian Jews. There were other efforts before that, and there were people that helped people who were escaping. I know you were vice president of the council, and that you worked hard to get President Hafez al-Assad to allow the Jews to go. It was Passover, April 1992, the second Exodus. Tell us about the lobbying and work that went into that effort and how you felt in April 1992 on the eve of Passover when Assad agreed to let 4,500 Jews leave.
Since Hafez al-Assad came into power in 1960s, he immediately used the Jews as a scapegoat in his country. It was the same policy throughout the Middle East. You want to have the Jews in your country as hostages. The only way you can do it is only one person from the family leaves. It's this way they can claim to the world, here, they are leaving. They can leave, they can go, and they can come. But in essence, only one person left. If he didn't come back on the day of his return, his family was gone. That person could not run. He had to come back, otherwise his family would be gone. And the Jews of Syria had close to 4 mukhabarat, which is like secret police assigned to each Jew. And their telephone was tapped, their mail was opened. Some of them were just killed in the street by anybody that had a gun. They just killed some people. They raped some women, etc. So they were held hostages and they could not leave. When I was speaking in the Deal Synagogue in New Jersey on one Shabbat, and when I was describing what I did in Egypt, the father of the president of the Council for the Rescue of Syrian Jews, Alice Sardell, and we had another person, she's an attorney, by the way, and Jack Mann was another attorney, and Marco Zolta was too an attorney, and I came in invited to join that group to see if I can help out. As a businessman, when I came to the meeting with them, I told them, listen, the best thing as a businessman, cherchez l'argent, go after the money. Let's look at Hafez al-Assad, what money does he get, where does he get his money? And we discovered from where Syria was a poor country. They only have to trade their products, which is a little bit of cotton, a little bit of nuts, a little bit of fruits to sell, but they didn't have at the time oil or anything like that. But they needed money to be given from EU and IMF, etc. We first took the level of the Syrian Jews issue with the United States Congress. They voted unanimously that Hafez al-Assad was a drug dealer and a terrorist, and they should not give any fund or aid to Syria. So the money of Syria was cut off from the United States. We went after the money of EU, IMF, the Italian, the Spanish countries. We met with the King of Spain. We met with many higher echelons, such as kings and prime minister. But the last coup d'etat that was good for me, like the last spin in Hafez al-Assad, was to reach Gorbachev. When I reached Gorbachev to stop giving Syria armaments and help him to build their army, and I was able to convince him through a good friend of mine named Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was a very good friend of mine. He was a media mogul. He had the ear of Gorbachev to help Russia to make Izvestia a profitable newspaper. He was a media mogul. Gorbachev used him to advise him how to make that Russian media newspaper. By having the ear of Gorbachev, I was able to connect via Robert Maxwell to Gorbachev's ear to stop giving the Syrian. In fact, I heard just 3-4 weeks before that event, the chief of staff from Russia went to Syria and demanded repayment of all the monies that Syria took from them, which was in the billions of dollars, unless he lets the Jews go. So again, we were parading, let my Jewish people go. This is a cry for us, and this is what we should do in every country that takes Jews down. This is what we have to do. Let my people go. Like we did it in Russia, we did it in Syria, we do it all over the world, and that's what we need to release our Jews. And now that we have a country of our own, we need to stand united, all of us. No matter what we believe in, no matter what religious position we are in, we have to unite. Only when Am Israel are united do we win. And please, speak to each other, connect with each other, love each other, because that's what we are, one family. Am Israel, Am Echad.
I just wanted to mention very briefly that that in addition to helping the Syrian Jews, he also helped, working with Alice Ardell, helped to save the life of Rabbi Moshe Harir, who was condemned to death in Yemen. And there's so much more you've done, Clem. I can't even begin to thank you for how much you've helped the Jewish people.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Serena, and thank you, Howard.
And that brings the 2023 Hall of Fame inductions to an end. I want to take a moment as we go out that we should just think of where we're going to be as Israel moves to victory. So thank you for being here.